the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can.
Jimmy Kimmel has officially been suspended. The late-night host is off the air after comments he made that shocked some, entertained others, and left America arguing about where the line is drawn between free speech and accountability. For some, this feels like corporate censorship. For others, it's simply a consequence of saying something reckless on national television. Either way, the debate is raging, and tonight we're breaking it all down in detail. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into the controversy surrounding Jimmy Kimmel and the sudden suspension of his show, Jimmy Kimmel Live. This story has dominated headlines, blown up social media feeds, and sparked heated debates on free speech, comedy, and corporate responsibility. What exactly did Kimmel say? Why did it trigger such an immediate and extreme response? And what does this mean not just for him, but for the entire future of late-night comedy in America? Let's take a closer look. The monologue that started everything began like any other. Jimmy Kimmel walked out on stage, delivered a few opening lines, and settled into his nightly rhythm. Sharp one-liners, playful exaggerations, and sarcastic digs at public figures. This time, his target was conservative commentator Charlie Kirk, someone Kimmel has poked fun at before. At first, the jokes landed in familiar territory, roasting Kirk's fiery persona and his controversial statements. But then came a moment that shifted the entire mood. Instead of simply mocking Kirk's politics or personality, Kimmel made a comment referencing the recent assassination attempt against him. While Kimmel's intent may have been to wrap it in humor, many viewers interpreted it as implying that Kirk deserved what had happened. That one sentence, less than 10 seconds long, completely altered the night. Fans of Kimmel brushed it off as just another edgy joke, pointing out that satire has always punched up at powerful people. They compared it to the kind of biting commentary Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert, or Bill Maher have delivered for decades. But critics immediately drew a line in the sand. They argued this wasn't satire anymore. This was trivializing political violence. The timing made it worse, since the incident involving Kirk had only just unfolded. What one half of the country saw as comedy, the other half saw as reckless and dangerous. Within hours of the broadcast, ABC responded. A short but decisive statement announced that Jimmy Kimmel Live would be temporarily suspended pending review. For viewers unfamiliar with how networks operate, that might have sounded vague. But in industry terms, it was loud and clear. Advertisers had called. Sponsors were nervous. And when advertisers get spooked, networks act fast. This wasn't just about one joke, it was about money, reputation, and political backlash all rolled together. To put this in context, late-night comedy has always flirted with controversy, but suspensions are rare. David Letterman once faced intense backlash for off-color jokes about Sarah Palin's family. Jimmy Fallon had to apologize after old sketches in blackface resurfaced. Bill Maher, who also had a show on ABC years ago, was fired entirely after comments he made following 9/11 were deemed unpatriotic. But even with those examples, most networks prefer damage control, issue a public apology, maybe take a week off, and move on. To halt an entire show so suddenly signaled just how seriously ABC viewed the situation. The reaction online was immediate and explosive. Supporters of Kimmel accused ABC of bending to political pressure and feeding into cancel culture. Hashtags like #StandWithKimmel and #ComedyIsNotACrime flooded Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. They argued that satire has always been edgy, sometimes offensive, and that silencing a comedian sets a dangerous precedent for free expression. For these fans, punishing Kimmel wasn't just about him, it was about eroding the role of comedy in holding power accountable. Critics, however, saw it differently. To them, this wasn't about cancel culture at all. It was about accountability. They pointed out that political violence is no laughing matter, and suggesting someone deserved it, even jokingly, crosses a moral line. The hashtag #FireKimmel began trending alongside the supportive ones, with calls for ABC to end his show permanently. Commentators noted that if a conservative comedian had made a similar comment about a liberal figure, outrage would have been immediate and widespread. In their eyes, suspension was not censorship. It was the bare minimum. Political voices quickly joined the conversation. Some conservative commentators celebrated Kimmel's suspension, calling it long overdue. Others framed it as proof of liberal hypocrisy, that comedians on the left get away with things their counterparts on the right never could. Meanwhile, some liberal commentators admitted Kimmel's timing was terrible, but argued that pulling his entire show was an overreaction. For several days, the controversy became unavoidable. It was debated on rival late-night shows, in morning talk shows, on cable news, and across countless podcasts. Kimmel, usually the one making headlines with jokes, had suddenly become the headline himself. At the heart of the debate is a larger question: free speech versus consequences. Supporters argue that comedy has always been about pushing boundaries. They point to figures like George Carlin, Richard Pryor, and Lenny Bruce, who faced backlash for their jokes but helped shape the cultural conversation through satire. From their perspective, limiting what comedians can say risks sanitizing comedy to the point of irrelevance. If comedians have to fear punishment every time a joke offends, what's left of the art form? Critics push back by noting that the First Amendment protects people from government punishment, not from consequences imposed by employers or sponsors. ABC, as a private company, is within its rights to decide who represents their brand. And while edgy comedy has its place, they argue that joking about political violence isn't edgy. It's dangerous. To them, Kimmel wasn't being silenced. He was being held responsible. This controversy has tapped into a much bigger conversation about the state of comedy in America. Over the past decade, we've seen comedians like Dave Chappelle and Joe Rogan face intense backlash for controversial material. We've seen networks grapple with whether to support or distance themselves from their talent. And we've seen audiences split down the middle, some demanding accountability, others demanding freedom of expression. The Kimmel situation is just the latest chapter in that ongoing struggle, but because of his mainstream platform, it feels particularly high stakes. So, what happens next? Officially, ABC insists this is temporary, but the longer the suspension lasts, the more it feels like a test run, gauging how audiences and advertisers respond without Kimmel on the air. Behind closed doors, the real power lies with sponsors. If advertisers believe Kimmel's presence will hurt their brands, ABC may have no choice but to cut ties permanently. On the other hand, if the outrage cools and public support builds, Kimmel could return with a scripted apology and a promise to do better. Hollywood insiders are split. Some predict Kimmel will return to his desk within a few weeks, using his comeback episode to address the controversy head-on with humor, possibly even poking fun at himself. Others believe his image has already taken too much damage, and that ABC may decide his time as a late-night host is over. If that happens, it could reshape the late-night landscape entirely, signaling to other comedians that their creative freedom is more limited than ever. At the end of the day, this story is about more than one man, one monologue, or one show. It's about the tension between art and responsibility, between entertainment and ethics, between freedom of expression and the reality of consequences. Whether you see Jimmy Kimmel as unfairly censored or rightfully suspended says a lot about how you view comedy, politics, and culture in America today. So now I'll throw it over to you. Was this an unjust case of censorship, proof that cancel culture has gone too far? Or was ABC right to act, showing that even comedians have lines they can't cross? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this breakdown helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next big story we cover. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.